Everybody, this is Karamas Girl 018, and this is going to be chapter 6 of my reading of the Stolen Throne. I am so sorry for not having done another one sooner, but, well, certain life changes happen, and I have not been able to get to recording as much due to my having to be a babysitter for my nephew. So, he's not in the house at the moment. He's with his mother, so taking this opportunity. So here is chapter 6, probably 2 parts for this chapter of the Stolen Throne, and I'm not going to do an Orlesian accent. I don't think I could pull it off. But here we go. To the king! Severin heard the toast to the king even before he entered the throne room. The chamber would be near bursting by now, filled with nobles from throughout Ferelden who had arrived to honor the day of His Majesty's birth. Honor, of course, might not be quite the word for it. The native Fereldans were terrified the king would strip them of their land as he had done to so many of their fellows in punishment for some crime real or imagined. The Orlesians, those members of the aristocracy who had chosen to seek out their fortunes away from the empire and had been given those stripped lands, feared much the same. The king, after all, was a bored and capricious member of an ancient aristocracy who had been sent to assume the Ferelden throne only after angering the emperor, his first cousin, and so the scandalous rumor claimed, one-time lover, and now took out his own displeasure on subjects who had little choice but to bow to his whims. Severin had tactfully informed the king that the rebels might have been curbed by now if he just took a lighter hand with the locals. Despite his hatred of the rebels and the embarrassment they represented, the king refused to heed the advice. He would do as he wished, and no one could tell him otherwise. Just as he did with his court, Severin thought, recalling how the king had tried to bring the Orlesian tradition of wearing the mask to the Fereldans. He had declared that all members of the nobility would be required to wear as fancy and as beautifully adorned a mask as they could acquire, and that at the end of each court, the wearer of the mask that pleased him the least would be punished. Needless to say, the frantic run on masks and the demand for those who could make them almost resulted in riots in the streets. Finally, when a would-be assassin managed to slip into the palace by wearing such a mask, the commander of the royal guard begged the king to lift the edict for the sake of security, or the edict for the sake of security. The collective sigh of relief when the king finally did so was almost palpable. King Megrin was a tyrant, and one did not honor tyrants. One appeased them. So the nobility put on a great show of adoration for their beloved monarch, their smiles a thin veneer covering their terror. The king, meanwhile, knew the nobles were acting. The nobility understood this, but also knew that the charade was working. A charade was required of them nonetheless. Such was the sad state of things in Orlesian-occupied Ferelden. Severin could not have cared less. He was from neither Ferelden nor Orlais, but from across the winking sea and far to the north, as his swarthy skin implied. He would have watched his own land be subjugated with no more than a raise of his eyebrow, for mages had no true home at all. His interests were his own, and the king accepted this. Severin's ambition was as reliable as the rising sun, and that was why he remained King Megrin's closest advisor. Amaranthine brings to its beloved king a sword of finest silverite, fashioned in the dwarven halls of Orzammar. May it serve him well in the years to come, and offer proof to all of Thedas that his might cannot be denied. As Severin entered the throne room, he saw the young Earl was standing amid the rows and rows of nobles seated at their supper table. I can't talk. Giving an overdone speech as several elven servants scampered up to the throne to present a long ornate case to the king. King Megrin, meanwhile, was the very picture of boredom. He was slumped low in the throne, one leg thrown over an arm, and propping up his head with a hand. The king was a handsome and virile young man, all dark curls and olive skin to go with that crooked sneer. Yet today he looked very much like someone who had overindulged for too many days, non-stop. Which was exactly the case. Megrin sighed heavily and stirred himself enough to sit up as this new gift was presented. The area immediately around the throne was already littered with other gifts which had been ignored or discarded with little more than a shrug. Mother Brannock stood immediately behind the throne, scrutinizing the proceedings intensely. She was a severe woman, her face lined with the cares of her office as the Grand Cleric of the Holy Chantry in Ferelden, and despite her small frame, she loomed as large in the chamber with her resplendent red vestments as the king did. Migren rubbed his nose in his rumpled velvet doublet and took the sword case from the prostrating elves, who immediately withdrew, which I don't blame her. Lifting the brilliant blade out of the case, Migren gave it a few practice swings and regarded it with interest. Of the dwarven make, you say? The Jarl bowed low, sweating despite the presumed pleasure that the king had deigned to take notice of his offering. Yes, your majesty, it was a gift from the king of the dwarves, made to the first of my line long ago. Ah, so then it was not made for me. Oh boy, you gotcha now. A hush came over the chamber, dinner conversation halting as the nobility picked up on Migren's icy tone. The Jarl blanched. It's of great value, he stammered. Never has a finer blade been made. I thought, surely you can see. Oh boy. Emperor Florian, he has given me a blade. The king interrupted. He swung the silverized sword idly to one side of the throne, each swing like a slow pendulum slicing at some invisible head, made by the finest crafters in the Val Rayo. It is a thing of great grace and beauty. Shall I inform him, then, that you consider your blade to be superior? The Jarl's eyes went wide. No, Perhaps it is your opinion I should return to him the gift. After all, there is no point in keeping the inferior blade to collect the dust, is there? Oh dear. The entire chamber was silent now. The Jarl glanced about the room, pleading with his eyes for help from the assembled nobles, but everyone was looking elsewhere. Which I don't blame them. He suddenly dropped to one knee, lowering his head. Forgive me, your majesty. It was a presumptuous gift. I apologize. Migren smirked and looked up as Mother Brannock stepped forward from behind the throne. Severin despised the woman utterly, a feeling that was mutual. If I may offer a suggestion, your majesty, she asked. The king waved his assent. Yes, of course. If the blade is as valuable as the Jarl suggests, a gift made of it to the Chantry would do as much to prove Amaranthine's piety in these dark times. There is much that remains to be done, after all, before the holy braziers of Ferelden shine with the glory that benefits a great nation. How true, the king cooed. He arched a brow at the Jarl. So how will you have it, your grace? Shall you instead give your blade to Mother Brannock? The Jarl's bow was quick and breathless. Of course, your majesty. I don't blame him for doing that. I'd rather not get my head cut off. Mother Brannock snapped her fingers as two pale servants that stood nearby. They rushed forward and gently took the sword from King Migren, placing it back in the case and running off while the mother watched. Once they were gone, she bowed low to the king. The thought is most appreciated, your majesty. Yeah, but kiss her. He sighed and turned his attention back to the Jarl, who remained bowed. So, what will you do now, your grace? Can this mean you have no birthday gift for the king? Oh, this isn't going to be good. Let's see. Shocked, the Jarl opened his mouth several times as if to speak, but no sound came forth. The silence in the hall became excruciating, not a single fork or knife touching a single plate. Several Orlesian chevaliers, the elite knights of the Empire, easily distinguishable by their bright purple tunics and feathered hats, stepped forward, with their hands on their sword hilts. Oh boy. Migren suddenly laughed, a maniacal sound that cut through the hush in the hall. He continued to laugh until the assembled nobles slowly joined him. They twittered uncertainly at first, then became louder and louder. Migren clapped his hands as the room roared with amusement. The Jarl of Amarantine remained quiet, sweat pouring down his brow. Wait, Jarl of Amarantine? Is that Rendon Howe or Rendon Howe's father or something? Huh. I guess if someone knows if it is or not, just let me know. Because I don't know if Howe was part of the rebels or if he was one of the noble I just mentioned or what. Because the Jarl of Amarantine was supposed to be Jarl Howe's Arling, so... Anyway, I jest, my friend, the king declared. You must forgive me. Such a gift made to the Chantry in my name. What more could I ask? The Jarl bowed low, his head almost touching the floor. I am relieved, your majesty. Still chuckling, Migren clapped his hands loudly to signal that the merriment should continue. Come, friends, eat, drink. Our celebration it continues, and is the sweeter now that the head of the pretender witch sits on a pole outside the gate. Sorry. Oh, I really do not like him. Is she not the pretty one? Ugh, I don't like him the way he did that to her. He roared his laughter again, the nobles joining in too quickly, and refreshed the Jarl's goblet. These robes, they are obviously too hot. Well, 'cause he's sweating, of course. The feast resumed, and Severin took the opportunity to cross the chamber toward the throne. The stench of wine and sweat hung thickly in the air. A number of the men and women quickly averted their gaze as he passed, becoming entirely interested in the pheasant on their plates, or whoever was seated next to them. Severin understood. The Chantry had done its best throughout the ages to ensure that mages were vilified and held responsible for every catastrophe that had befallen mankind. Sorry. This is what happens when I record this. It hurts my throat. To think that once mages had ruled over all of Thedas and were now barely tolerated servants monitored by their Chantry watchdogs. A sad plight, to be sure. King Migrin brightened when he saw his advisor approaching. Mother Braddock did exactly the opposite, her scowl twisting the lines of her face into something entirely unattractive. "Can you not even leave your king to enjoy a single celebration in peace, mage?" she murmured icily. "Must you darken this hall with so many guests about?" Now, Migrin chuckled. "Do not be so hard on our dear friend the mage. He works very hard for his sovereign, is it not so?" Severin lowered his head and bowed, the silk of his yellow robe shimmering. With his hair thinning and his features made entirely of sharp angles, he was nowhere near as handsome as the king. The finest compliment Severin had ever received was from a young prostitute who had said that he looked clever, that his tiny eyes could seize her, chew her up, and spit her out all with a single gaze. He had liked that so much he'd waited until morning to have her dragged off to prison. "I have news, your majesty," he said. "Could you not have sent a messenger?" Mother Braddock asked, the chill remaining in her voice. "When I have news for you, dear woman, I will always send a messenger." Oh. Migrin slowly sat up and yawned, rubbing his bloodshot eyes and blinking rapidly. He stood straightening his rippled doublet and waving to the servants out not to follow him. "Then let us be quick," he walked off. Mother Braddock and Severin following quickly and leaving the noise of the throne room behind. The sitting room was used as a retreat for more private audiences. Migrin had the sturdy and practical Feraldan furniture replaced by more ornate Orlesian furnishings, all mahogany and bright satins that were works of art on their own. Vivid red paper covered the walls, a practice Severin knew was becoming popular in the Empire. Migrin threw himself down on a padded settee, yawning again and rubbing his forehead. "Is this what passes for an evening of entertainment in this backwater? To hear the musicians they brought in?" Severin shook his head. "Before or after you had been sent running from the chamber?" Bah! What I would not give for a real orchestra, or a masquerade. The country lords I am sent from Morlaix would not have had a proper Basset if they kicked them in the arse. I do not know if I pronounced it right. He started derision and sat up, glaring at Severin. "Do you know what one of those little fools from the Banon gave me? Dogs. A pair of dogs." Hey, hounds are valued in Ferelden. Mother Braddock her voice laden with disapproval. "Those were warhounds, a mating pair. From such a minor lord, their ban, it would such great respect, Your Majesty." "Great fear, more like," he sniffed, barely mollified. "I'm sure it was some kind of insult giving me beasts with still half covered in still haven't done. All those backward fools in the Banorna are like. It is indeed sad that you must be inflicted with so much dung on your birthday, Your Majesty," Severin said calmly. Meg threw his hands up and sighed. "Tell me, good mage, new carry is a response from our emperor?" Sorry. Severin hesitated. "I do have a response, yes. But that is not. Nothing is more urgent than a letter from Florian." Severin stretched his robe, stealing himself. "His Imperial Majesty sends his regrets. He is certain that your duties will continue to hold you in Ferelden, and so there is no place within the Imperial Court for you now." Migrin sank into the cushions. Still no forgiveness, then. Severin sighed in relief. Some days a letter from the Emperor could result in a tantrum, or far worse. But not today, evidently. "You were expecting a different response than the last 14 attempts?" he asked forgivingly. "I am the eternal optimist, good mage. The definition of insanity, Majesty, is to perform the same action repeatedly and expect different results." Yeah, exactly what you're doing. Migrin tittered with amusement. You are calling me insane? Insanely persistent. Listen. Mother Brannock's lips thin. You are still a king, your majesty. But to have been made a lowly baron in the provinces, the king complained. Then I could still keep a house in the Bowery. Oh, still visit the Grand Cathedral. He sighed heavily. Ah, well, I may be the king of a backwater, but at least this is my backwater, yes. Shall I get another response? 15 times the charm, Severin asked. Perhaps later. We shall see if we can wear him down. Yes. Nick takes for a moment, and his lip became serious. Now then, this news you carry, it is from the hinterlands. Indeed. Well, out with it. Severin took a deep breath. The information I received was accurate. The rebel army was exactly where it was supposed to be. The attack, however, did not have the result wished. Many were killed, the rebels split the news. Magrin's brow shot up. Oh? There is more. Prince Merrick lived with the rebels. He lit a distraction and held out with a handful of men atop a cliff before escaping with the rest of his army. Severin held out a large scrap of cloth. It was tattered and soiled, but the deep purple color could still be seen. The rebels were inspired rather than dispirited. Nettled, the king frowned at Severin as his fingers drummed on the arm of the city. Inspired? You told me he would not be there. The boy was supposed to be killed along with the mother. He was tracked to a camp of outlaws, Severin answered slowly. They were slaughtered, but somehow he escaped into the wilds and survived. So am I to understand this correctly? Megan continued to drop his finger, his tone irritable. The boy, the incompetent prince, managed to not only escape your men in the forest, but trekked through the wilds and appeared safe and sound, just in time to lead the spirited defense of the rebel army. I am as incredulous as you, your majesty. Mother Brannock's face was hard with anger. His spells bring you nothing, your King Magrin. Throw him out. He serves his pride and nothing else. And what have you done for the throne except provide a string of platitudes, each more useless than the last, while you demand tribute for your hungry flames? Her eyes went wide with outrage. The Maker will never allow Ferelden to prosper while it keeps the cancer in its very heart. Hey! Mages are not the cancer. The people who use magic unwisely are the cancer. Magic itself is not evil. The people who wield it in bad ways, that's bad. Your Maker is gone, as it said in your own chant of light. He has abandoned his own creation and has no care for anything further. So spare us your useless prattle, woman. Blasphemy! She roared. Silence! Megrin shouted, his face twisted in fury. Mother Brannock calmed reluctantly in response as the king rubbed his face in agitation. You said that without their beloved queen, the rebels, they will be done, Severin. You said you could wipe them out with the one blow. Yes, your majesty. Pride, the priest declared. Megrin raised a hand to cut off Severin's reply. Obviously, this boy Merrick is more than you assumed. Perhaps. Severin was not ready to assume the opposite was true just yet either. It is also possible that he found help somewhere. Somehow. He certainly has the support of the Queen's lieutenants. The daughter of the former Earl of Redcliffe, Lady Rowan, is said to have slain your cousin Felix in the battle, for instance. Rode him down in cold blood. Felix? Megrin shrugged. I never liked that one. Still, the backbone of the rebels proved to be far stiffer than I'd imagined. I do apologize for my mistake, your majesty. He bowed his head down low. I asked for another chance. Megrin grinned slyly. You have something in mind? I always have something in mind. The young king chuckled and glanced over at the Grand Cleric, who stared intently down at her hands folded in her lap. I suppose your advice is the same as always, my sweet lady? Marry a daughter of Ferelden, she said wearily, as if she had said this many times before, and produce a child. You cannot rule this country until you truly are truly its king. All humor vanished from the king. He glared at Mother Brannock, who paled but did not flinch. I rule this country, he snapped, and I am its king. You would do well to remember this. I speak from the perspective of your people, your majesty. They are good, simple folk who could accept you. They are ignorant fools, he snapped, and they will accept me because they have no choice. As long as the Chevaliers remain, so do I. He calmed, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. Then he turned back to Severin. You have another chance, good mage. We will do things your way once more, but only because I have no wish to marry some dog-faced local. That is clear. Severin bowed again. I will not fail you, your majesty. Let me check the time and see if I need to... Let me see how long the rest of this is. Not too long. I'll keep on going. Severin returned to his quarters deep within the house. Greatly relieved, Migrin did not send him back to the circle of magi. Within the circle, under the watchful gaze of the Chantry's Templars, his every spell would be scrutinized and monitored. At least in King Migrin's employ he had power, even if he had to use it carefully. Men like Migrin were permitted by the circle to have one of their mages as an advisor, under the condition that the mage was watched by the Chantry. Migrin could defy Mother Brannock's wishes only to a point. He cursed whatever luck he had allowed Prince Merrick to ruin his plans. It had been an excellent one. The Theron bloodline and the rebellion both wiped out. The king would have been allowed to return to the imperial court, and Severin, the hero of the day, might even have been left as governor. But now he had to try again. Severin's quarters were dark, as befitted his mood. With a wave of his hand, the lanterns hanging by the door flared brightly. As the room was bathed in firelight, he noticed a figure leaning against one of the posts of his great bed. "Greetings, my lord mage." It was an elven woman, beautiful in the way that only her kind could be, with porcelain skin and slanted eyes and an impossible green. This one was dressed in leathers that accentuated her curves, and her golden honey curls cascaded around her shoulders artfully. She was a spy, of course. The fact that he could see the dagger sheathed at her waist meant that she was not here to kill him, or so he assumed. If he was wrong on that point, she was certainly welcome to try. "Do you always enjoy standing in dark rooms?" Walking into his quarters, he brushed by her and quickly gathered up the many papers that were spread over his desk. He chuckled, watching him with keen interest. "If my purpose here was to read your precious letters, do you not think I would have already done so, my lord?" "Perhaps you did. If so, then I should have you executed, no? I am here at your invitation." And sorry, I cannot do an Antivan accent. I could try, but I will probably butcher it. He put down the paper slowly, nodding. "You are the bard, then?" "I am," she bowed politely. "Our mutual friend, Inval Cheven, stands in his regards just as he sends me." Severin stepped toward her, taking her delicate chin in his hand, and turning her face from side to side to scrutinize her more closely. She did not bat an eyelash. "He sent me an elf, did he? You seem very tarted up for one of your station." "I can be less so, my lord." "Ugh. Of that I have no doubt. Bards in Orlais had a notorious reputation. They masqueraded as minstrels or actors traveling from court to court in the Empire. Ostensibly to entertain their noble patrons while plying their true trade in secret. Politics in the Empire were a devious business, and thus bards were never in short supply. One would think the nobility would simply stop receiving entertainers altogether, but the truth was that the possibility of any traveling minstrel being a dangerous spy added an exotic allure. That a nobleman might be important enough to be spied upon, and courageous enough to take on a possible spy, made the temptation too much for any self-respecting aristocrat to bear. "If my lord believes an elf cannot do as he needs," she began. "No," he released her chin. "Simply remember your place. I have a contract with your master, and that means you are now mine." His gaze was steel, and he was pleased to see that she did not flinch. He wondered if there was a single elf in Ferelden who could manage the same. Succeed in your task, and you will be rewarded. Fail, and you will end up begging for scraps in the alienage along with your fellows, wishing you had stayed in Orlais. Is that sufficiently clear? She was silent for a moment, her face assuming a calm veneer. Stiffly she bowed to him again. "I understand," she said smoothly. "I am told the contract is for a single task, yes?" Stepping away from him, she perched on the edge of the bed and regarded him with an artful come-hither look. "Is it to be something of a personal nature?" "No need to exert yourself on my benefit." He waved her off contemptuously. "Do you know who Prince Merrick is?" The oven woman paused, thinking. "Yes, I think I do," she said, her tone now all business. "The son of the proper queen of Ferelden, out hiding with her in the wilderness somewhere. Is that not so? The rebel queen is dead. You might have seen her head outside the gates. Is that what that was? It was looking a little green and putrid. Queen wasn't the first word that came to mind. Nevertheless, the boy is her heir, and he is alive. I need you to get close to him." The elf considered the idea, twirling one of her locks behind her finger thoughtfully. "That will take time. Time we have. And are we to negotiate my reward then? Complete your task first, he said dismissively. Afterwards, Kingmaker can and will provide whatever reward you desire. She stood from the bed and then bowed again, this time low and servile. Then it seems you have a bard at your disposal, my lord. Severa nodded pleased. One more chance then to destroy the rebellion. In the distance he heard the muffled sound of forced laughter from the throne room. The laughter was punctuated by someone screaming in pain, probably for Meagre's amusement. It was the only reason the king delighted in such gatherings. Someone always had to suffer before the night was through. Someone always suffered. And that, everybody, is Chapter 6. Next time will be Chapter 7, though I don't know when it's gonna be. So keep a lookout for any videos that pop up on my account. It could be the Let's Play post. It could be for the book. Who knows? Anyway, I will see you guys next time on Reading the Stolen Throne. We continue with Chapter 7.